John, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Do you recall the date?
Well, only that it was shortly after graduating from high school.
So was it in June?
Yes.
So you graduated in June, then you immediately enlisted?
Yeah.
And what year was that?
1943.
Why did you enlist?
Well, it was wartime, and I went with some other guys too. You know, other young fellas that were graduating, and so we enlisted.
So you all went down together?
Yeah.
Where were you living at the time?
At Newburyport, Massachusetts.
Now, you enlisted in the Navy. Why did you choose the Navy?
I don't know. I think probably I heard better words about the Navy than I did the Army. And we lived right side of the river and boats and so forth.
Did you have any experience growing up with ships or the ocean or working on boats?
No, I didn't work on, yeah, we lived near the ocean and the river, Merrimack River, and every Sunday in the nice weather, my father would take us all down to the river and rent a boat, and we'd row out and go fishing and as a family, the whole family.
Do you recall your first days in service? Where did you go right after you enlisted?
To Rhode Island, Connecticut. Rhode Island?
No.
No.
Newport, Rhode Island?
Newport,
I think is what you told me.
Newport, Rhode Island, yeah.
Is that where you did your basic training?
Yeah.
And can you tell me what that was like? What kinds of things did you do?
Well, one thing that we did was do a little running around in the sound with the boats, in boats, you know, get used to being on the water. And some of the things we did was jumping into the swimming pool, pretending the ship was sinking, and there was gasoline burning on the water. You had to dive in, swim underwater, raise up, take a breath, and thrash your arms around to keep the flames away in case you're still there. That type of thing.
Do you recall how long basic training lasted?
Oh, it was around 3 months.
Do you recall any memorable incidents that happened during basic training?
No, not really. No. Yeah, there was one. You're all in line, and there's a line of people, and you get started, so they all got needles, and you get a boom, boom, boom. You're going down the line, boom, boom, and you wonder what the hell's going on.
Oh my gosh, you were getting vaccinated for everything. They weren't gentle.
Well, it was just surprising, you know.
Where did you go following your basic training?
I went to St. Louis, Missouri, to an A school.
What's an A school?
It was electrical, but it was, you know, the basic electrical.
Did you choose that you wanted to go into the electrician, or did the Navy choose that for you?
I had suggested carpentry or electrical, and they chose the electrical.
Did you have any prior experience with electricity?
Only just fooling around in the house.
So how long did A school last in St. Louis?
That was about 3 months.
And what did you learn there? The basics of electricity?
Yeah.
Do you have any memorable experiences from your time in St. Louis?
Only that I met a nice family and a young lady that we were friendly. Yeah.
Where did you go after St. Louis?
I went to Washington, D.C. to a Navy base with Electrical Interior Communications School. That was about 8 months.
What kinds of things did they teach you there?
All kinds of electronics and electrical, and how to play volleyball.
What kind of electronics did you work with there?
Gee, it's hard to remember. I don't remember exactly, but it was to familiarize you with some of the equipment on ships and so forth. Sound-powered telephones, various things. I forget now all the details.
But it was mostly communication electronics?
And oh no, it was wiring and generators and so forth.
Now, were they training you so that when you went on board a ship, you would be able to do any electrical thing that came up, whether it was actually fixing things on the ship or working with the communication?
Well, actually, to fix up the electrical on the ship. That was what I went aboard ship to do as an electrician.
After your 8 months in Washington, where did you go?
To a ship it was on a shakedown cruise. I picked it up, I forget where. It was on the East Coast.
What ship was it?
USS Hyman, DD 732.
So you picked it up for the shakedown cruise, and is this the ship that you stayed on for the rest of your time?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you picked up that somewhere on the East Coast, and where did you go for the shakedown cruise?
Well, it had already been part of the shakedown cruise was done, but we went down to Maine, and we get liberty occasionally to go over and go to a restaurant or something, just to see the area. And then we went south through the Panama Canal and up the west coast of the United States. I think I don't know if we stopped at San Diego or San Francisco first, but we stopped at both of those cities.
Did you know that you were heading overseas at that time?
Yeah.
Once you left the United States, where was your first stop?
Pearl Harbor, Hawaii.
Did you stay for very long at Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, we stayed a while. I don't know why, but the officers were learning to use bombardment techniques to shoot the guns. So there were some islands that were barren, and they'd shoot at targets there, different little islands.
What was Pearl Harbor like during the time you went there? Because this is after the bombing. This is 2 years after it was bombed.
It was just a Navy, where Navy ships were. It was an ordinary looking area.
Was the damage from the bombing still visible?
Not really, no.
They had fixed it up?
Yeah.
Did you live on the ship, or did you have quarters on base?
Oh, I lived on the ship. Yeah.
Can you describe what the USS Hyman was, what kind of a ship it was, and how large and how many men it would hold?
Well, I think we had 400 guys, men. It was a destroyer.
You have pictures?
Yeah.
Oh, great. And we will include pictures with And we'll attach these photos to John's record. So, can you tell me a little bit about a destroyer, its capabilities, and its purpose?
Well, it had two engines, two high pressure steam engines, two propellers. It had gun mounts on the bow, amidships, and toward the stern, 5-inch guns. And at that time we had something new. We had proximity shells, so that if you came close to your target, it would explode and you didn't have to hit your target directly, which was good when you're shooting at airplanes.
So a destroyer, how would it travel? Did you travel in a convoy? Did you travel with escorts? Were you alone?
A destroyer, we traveled a lot with aircraft carriers because the pilots would sometimes not land right, or they might not take off right, and we'd have to pick them up out of the water. And when we did, we got 22 gallons of ice cream for each pilot that we picked up. Of course, they lost the plane, it sunk.
Do you recall any incidents where you had to pick up a pilot?
Oh yeah, we did. We got a lot of pilots because we ran with aircraft carriers for a while. But then when we were not doing that, we would be convoying ships that didn't have the armament.
How large would the convoys be?
Well, it varied. It'd be 1 or 3 or 5 or whatever.
When you left the United States to go over to Pearl, did you go alone or in a convoy with other ships?
Oh, we went in a convoy, yeah.
After you left Pearl, and they were practicing, where did you go?
I don't remember exactly, but I think basically we went to Iwo Jima.
And what can you recall about Iwo Jima?
I can give you a long story.
Well, go ahead, tell me.
Okay, well, for a day or two, after the troops were landed on the island, we were doing some bombarding from the ship. And toward evening, a Marine had climbed up on Mount Suribachi, which we called Hot Rocks, and he wanted firepower. So our skipper volunteered, and I had the searchlight with a couple of guys for crew. So we would match up the guns in the searchlight and go around, and the Marine would tell us when we were pointed at an area where a coastal defense gun would come out of a cave, because the gun would go back in the cave. So we'd leave the guns aimed at that spot and run the searchlight around, and when the gun came out, the Marine would let us know and we'd shoot the gun away. And we did this all night long, and we cleaned the whole mountain of the coastal defense guns.
These were Japanese guns.
Yeah. Oh, and they were also shooting on our troops that were on the island too. So we cleaned all that Hot Rocks out, and in the morning I'm tired. I'm headed for my bunk, and they say, "Come topside and see the raising of the flag." I say, "The hell with that, boy. I'm tired."
So you were actually at Iwo Jima when they raised the flag, but you didn't see it because you went to bed?
Well, that's why they raised the flag, because we cleaned the mountain out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were instrumental in that, and then you never even saw it.
I didn't see the flag raising, no. Not until I got home. Later on, years later. Yeah.
Did you realize then? Did you say, I was there?
It to me, was normal. I mean, there I was. What could I do about it?
After Iwo Jima, where did your ship go?
Well, we went to several islands, or 3 or 4 islands, and we went to Leyte, the northern tip of the Philippines, and I can tell you stories about some of the islands.
Yes.
With pictures. I got
Okay,
some pictures.
I'll add those pictures later. Yes, go ahead. Tell me about the islands.
Well, one of them had a seaplane hangar and a place to launch the seaplanes. This was for the Japs. And that was destroyed, partially destroyed. And around the corner was 2 oil tanks which were damaged by being shelled. And then there was 2 tunnels that ran back in the rock, solid rock. And when you got in there, there was a ladder. You could climb up the ladder. Now this is solid rock. And you could look down with a bright light and you could see that this was a big oil tank. Now you could see with the bright light, you could see the sides. It was at least 20 foot deep, probably 30 foot deep. But you couldn't even see the far end. It was that big, and it was all solid rock. Amazing. And I think that was Kasawi or Ponape, one of those 2. It's probably in my diary.
So did they dig that out? And what did they store in there?
Oil. That's how the Japs prepared for the things that they did. Amazing. And it was at a time when some of the places were being surrendered by the Japs. So we took the surrender of some of the islands.
What was that like? Can you describe one of those surrenders?
Oh, the Japs would come out in a boat and and we had an admiral on the ship at the time, and they'd get up in the forecastle and do their paperwork or whatever and then take off. They'd get on the ship and go back to Japan.
Oh, when they surrendered, we did not take prisoners of war. They let them loose?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have pictures of that, of the Japs.
Okay, great. We'll add those. When you were at Leyte, was this after or before or during the Battle of Leyte Gulf?
It was after, and that area had been released from the Japs. And they were so happy about it that they invited us to a ceremony.
The Japanese did or Americans?
The Japs were gone.
Oh.
At least where I was. Yeah. And these were thatched huts, natives. But they happened to have a German chief, a guy that came from Germany. And so they celebrated by cooking food and dancing. The guys did the dancing, and part of it was like this, and the women were giggling like hell. And what you could do there is you tell the guy you wanted one, and you climb a coconut tree, get a coconut, bring it down, a green one, and with this big knife, he'd lop off the top so you could drink the juice. And to pay for it, you took your pack of cigarettes, flipped them up, and he took as many as you flipped up, he took. That was his pay for doing that.
What other islands did you visit while you were in the Philippines?
That was it. I think we left there in a storm so we could get to Okinawa without being...
What year, do you remember what year that was?
Well, it's in here, but I can't read very good anymore.
Okay, well, you have a diary, and we'll include that too, so we can actually see what you were feeling at the time.
Yeah.
Did you know that you were heading to Okinawa to
Yeah.
be in a fierce battle?
We knew we were headed to Okinawa. I didn't know what was going to happen.
When you left the Philippines to head to Okinawa, how many other ships were you traveling with?
I think we were alone.
You one lonely destroyer headed
Yeah.
to Okinawa?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what happened once you got to Okinawa, what that was like?
Well, we were where some ships were there, and we had to protect them from submarines. So we were patrolling the local area, and when a sub came up, we give it depth charges.
You would drop depth charges?
Yeah. In fact, one submarine came up on the port side, just about the area where my bunk was. They told me about it. The submarine come up and looked, and then went down again. They were going to torpedo the ship that was over there, and we were in the way. So I was sleeping in my bunk at the time, so I could have got a torpedo.
Right through your window. What can you describe what the depth charges were like and what you had to do for that?
Well, the depth charges were like a trash can, and we had them in several places on the stern of the ship, and they were so that you could roll them out, and they dropped in the water. But you had to kind of keep moving a little, because after they got to a certain depth, they'd go off. They'd explode. And sometimes the hull of the ship would kind of lift up from the explosion, according to how fast or how slow you were going,
When you were on board the destroyer and and you were in contact with Japanese, what were your duties? What would you be doing as an electrician? Would you be doing electrical work, or would you be manning guns?
No, I had the searchlight. That was, I can show you in the picture. It was on the front part of the after stack over top of our torpedo tubes. And that was my general quarter station.
And you would man the searchlight, and you would have to direct it. How would you know where you would be directing it?
Well, I had the phones and a helmet and a life jacket on, and I had one guy was sitting there for elevation, and one guy was sitting there for training out. And we could also connect it up to the fire control area, so that if they wanted to follow the guns, they could connect the searchlight and train it out themselves.
So that was an important job. Like on Suribachi, when the Marine that was on shore would tell you where to aim your searchlight, is that how you knew? How did you talk to him? Through radio?
No, we were automatically connected to the guns at the time.
The searchlight was?
Yeah, so they were the guys that had the fire control. There was a special room with all the equipment, and they controlled all the guns' direction and the searchlight if we were connected to them.
So the searchlight would automatically go where the guns were going?
A lot of the time, yeah. Train out, match up, and shift automatic was the call.
What was it?
Train out, match up, and shift to automatic.
Ah.
That was for them to connect, and then they could control where the searchlight went.
Now, I know that there was an incident where your ship was hit at Okinawa. Can you describe that to me?
Well, we left the area where we were and went to patrol a section off of IE Island. And we did that for a day or so, or 24 hours or so. And then they called us back to the area we had come from. And the ship that relieved us, as we almost got back to there, said they had trouble. They'd been hit and they were sinking by these suicide planes. So we steamed back to that area, and the planes would come in and we'd shoot, blow them up, and one went over the ship and just missed the ship. So we got about 7. Now the 8th one came down at a very steep angle, and he hit right in the middle of the ship where the torpedo tubes were.
It was a kamikaze plane?
Yeah. And we already shot the wing off and so forth, but because of the angle and the momentum, he kept coming. So he came and hit down through the torpedo tubes and down through the what do you call it, the pharmacy. Killed some of the pharmacy guys, wounded some. Then it went into the forward engine room. Now the job that I wanted when I got aboard ship was that electrician on the board in the engine room. He wouldn't give it to me. They gave me the searchlight. Well, the guy on the board in the engine room got killed instantly. And the plane engine went out through the side of the hull. So that meant that that engine room and we had a fire room for the front, for the forward engine room, and a fire room for the making steam for the after engine room. Well, it knocked out the forward engine room and the after fire room. So now we had a fire room up here and an engine room back here. Well, anyway, we got 2 more planes after that. They kept coming. And then we got back to the area where we were, and they patched the hole in the side of the hull. And we were working down in these spaces with high pressure steam. You know, if you did that past a leak, your finger was gone. And there was no lights down there, of course, because everything was damaged. Well, we were down there changing the connections to the sound-powered telephones and electrical connections so that the 2 could work together. And then we were going to leave for the States the next morning.
When you got hit, that sounds pretty serious, that plane went all the way through and the engine kept going. Were you in danger of sinking?
Not really, because there was only one compartment that was flooded.
And you could seal that off?
It was. They all were sealed off.
Oh.
You know, the different compartments were separated. Yeah.
But because of the damage, you had to repair it before you could leave?
Well,
The electrical parts?
Yeah, and they had to patch the hole up in the side of the hull because it was below the water. And half an hour before we left, a minesweeper came by and took a mine right off of where we were going to be going. So we got lucky.
A couple times.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, now let me tell you more about the plane came down. One of my men, of the 2 on the searchlight, jumped to the next area. His body was outlined on the stack by shrapnel. You could see him, you could see his body by the fact that the stack didn't have shrapnel where he was at that moment when he jumped. Myself, I hit the deck, and then I vaulted over the thing, and I was going down to the second deck. And I remembered I had the telephones on with a helmet over the telephones. So I quick whipped out my knife and cut the cord before I got to the end of it.
Boy, that was fast.
Yeah, you're right. So I got down to the second deck, and I went down to the first deck, and now the fire hoses had damage to them by the shrapnel. So I broke out a new fire hose and brought it up to midships because that's where there was things burning there. And an officer took the nozzle away from me, so I figured I'd turn around and make sure the water got turned on. Just then one of our torpedoes exploded and we got blown down. And when I got ready, I was picking myself up and there was a coin spinning on the deck. And so I picked it up and put it in my pocket. It was that officer's lucky coin, dollar, and he was never seen again. He must have got blown overboard. So he took the hose from me.
Well, you had a lot of close calls.
Yeah.
What were you thinking? Now, when you were on deck when that plane was coming at you. Did you even have time to think about it? Did you know he was going to hit the ship?
Oh yeah, you could see him coming. That's when
What were you thinking?
I hit the deck of the searchlight platform. What could you do? You couldn't. We'll go anyway. So anyway, after that, since I didn't have a general quarters station, and the pharmacy was blown up, and the pharmacist's mates were damaged, or wounded, or dead. So I broke out supplies, and anytime a guy went by with a flash burn on his face or something, I'd put some wipe salve on him, you know? So I did that for
So you
bit.
became a corpsman.
And eventually I put my life jacket, because I had the phones in our helmet, I had to have the life jacket that wrapped around, and not the one that was a vest. So I put my life jacket on my bunk, and when I went down to it, it was smoking. Where it was doubled over my stomach, the shrapnel was in there. I didn't get a scratch.
Holy cow.
So I was lucky that way. And then we had to come back to the States, 17 degrees rudder to go straight. But a destroyer has to do this when they're protecting the convoy.
You have to zigzag
Yeah.
so that you don't make a good target.
So with one engine, well, we're going faster than the other ships are going. So with one engine and 17 degrees rudder to go straight, we had to zigzag. You can imagine what that was.
How long did it take you to get back to the United States going that way?
Oh, I don't remember. It was the normal travel, you know, the normal speed of it. Well, while we were going out, there was a partially destroyed destroyer that passed us. They were headed for the States. This guy got so disturbed about it that he went cuckoo and he jumped overboard. And when they sent the boat after him, he refused to take the line, and he just drowned. So that was one guy we lost right away.
Now, where did you land in the United States when you came back?
Frisco. The Navy, there was a big Navy yard there. And the ship got repaired.
What did you do while they were repairing the ship?
Well, we had a what do you call it? A leave, a liberty, yeah, a leave. You know. So I went home, and now when you were writing letters, you couldn't disclose any information about what you were doing or not. So to my folks, I wrote that, you remember the day with the BB gun I shot the weather vane on the garage? It was an airplane. I hit it 17 times. They thought I was going nuts. Instead of understanding that I was telling them.
So they didn't even get it until you told
They
them?
didn't get it, no.
Now, the 17 times, is that how many aircraft?
Well, we had 8, 10. We had 10 or so of our own, you know, but we're not always. We weren't always the lone one shooting. There was other ships shooting, you know.
Right. So, did you go back and rejoin your ship once it got repaired?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So after your leave at home, you went back to San Francisco. How long did it take for them to repair the ship?
Oh, it probably was less than 2 months. Yeah.
So when you rejoined the ship, did the whole same crew rejoin?
So
You all got back on board, and where did you go then?
Well, that's what I was trying to remember. I don't think we went back out there. Well, anyway, eventually we went down and through the Panama Canal and up the East Coast, and I got off the ship.
So you went through the Panama Canal twice,
Yeah.
and the ship came up the East Coast, and where did it land?
Boston.
Is that when you were discharged?
Yeah, in the Boston Navy Yard. Yeah.
Do you know how many casualties there were on your ship during the period of time you were there?
Yeah. But I don't know if I've got
It's
it.
in the records?
Yeah.
All right, and we'll look through those and we'll see.
Yeah.
Do you have any what was your most memorable experience when you were overseas in the Pacific?
I suppose it was the plane.
Well, that's pretty memorable.
Suicide.
That would be a hard thing to forget.
Suicide planes. I mean, they're coming at you. It was, you know, here's a plane coming at you, and we're shooting to 5 inches, and boom, the plane's it's taking care of them. Then one keeps coming, and it misjudged, turned over, he passed upside down over the ship, and then he dived because he knew he was missing, but he missed the ship. So that was one that was lucky.
Now, you knew about the kamikazes and the suicide crashes before you got to Okinawa, so you knew the Japanese were doing that kind of thing?
Yeah.
So you were prepared for that?
Well, yeah.
Well, you were prepared that it might happen, but you hadn't experienced it yet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you recall any particularly unusual or funny experiences that happened to you?
Well, to me, it's unusual to see a guy standing there with his intestines falling out. I mean, that was not.
And where was that?
That was after the plane hit.
And that was on board your own ship?
Yeah. Yeah, he was one of the pharmacy guys. Yeah. It was going back, Iwo Jima. A boat came out with a couple of wounded Marines, I believe they were, and a Jap. So here's the Marine, his bottom, his ass was all just, hurt by the explosion or whatever it was that did it. So he's laying on the table and they're working on him, and they slid the Jap on the stretcher underneath. Now he's reaching down, he can't quite reach that Jap to choke him while he's being worked on.
Oh my gosh. Oh, and you saw that? Oh my.
Uh-huh.
Well, John, now I'm going to ask you some questions about daily life while you were in the service.
Mm-hmm.
How did you stay in touch with your family when you were overseas?
By mail.
Were you a good letter writer?
Well, you were limited. You couldn't tell them anything that could be of a military youth, you know. So you just spoke about little things, you know.
And then when you did try to use your own code to your parents, they didn't get it.
Yeah.
Did you have good mail delivery so that you could receive mail pretty regularly?
No, it was whenever you happened to be say at an island, and sometimes you'd get the mail that way.
What was the food like?
One day I had my tray and I sat down in a meeting, and a guy comes in and he sits down opposite me and he says, "What's that?" And I says, "I don't know." He says, "Well, what's that?" I says, "I don't know." He says, "Well, what?" "I don't know." He says, "What are you, dumb?" I said, "Get the hell out of here."
So you didn't always know what you were eating.
Uh-huh.
Did you always have 3 meals a day on board ship? Was there a mess hall and you would report for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Yeah, you'd stand in line and go down through. And
how about other supplies, clothing, ammunition, other materials that you needed? Was there ever any shortages, or did you always have enough of what?
Well, you had your own gear, your own sea bag and you actually had a mattress and a hammock that you could string up.
You slept in a hammock?
At times, but there was bunks on the ship. So you had your clothing, but there was a place where you could buy some things. One thing you could buy was a carton of cigarettes for 50 cents.
Did you smoke at the time?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that was right on board ship you could buy those cigarettes, or only when you docked somewhere?
Oh no, on the ship. Oh, now I remember. After the ship was repaired, we went west, and we also went to Japan. This was after the war was ended. So I made liberty in Japan, and I bought some silk material and I don't know if anything else. But
where in Japan did you land?
Tokyo.
Oh, you went right through Tokyo.
Yeah.
That must have been interesting.
Yeah, it was, and I'm walking around one day, and I'm by a park. There's a park in Tokyo, and I looked over, and it looks like a hand grenade. Oh no, I guess I better not touch it. So I walked away. I don't know what it was, whether it was a plant there or...
So the Japanese had already surrendered. What was the reception like for you Americans? How did the Japanese people treat you?
Not too bad, no. There was a, what do you call it, a geisha house, a whorehouse. I was in there for once.
So that was an unusual experience.
Yeah.
So on board, you had your bunks. What were the sleeping quarters like?
Well, most of it was 3 bunks. There was metal things down the bottom, and there'd be 3 spots with a metal cover. This was yours. This was somebody else's. And you could keep your clothing and stuff in those. And you have 3 bunks, one on top and one on... Now, you go out on Liberty and you come back, and the guy across on the next row, he's up here, and you're down here, and he's been drinking and he's throwing up.
No fun. Did you always have enough ammunition and the electrical supplies you needed for your work?
Yeah. Well, there was one problem. Every time we shot the guns, the mirrors would break. So one day I'm shaving, and I'm going through the motions of shaving, like I would if the mirror was there. And the guy says, "You dummy, there's no mirror there."
John, did you feel pressure or stress?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, you were in combat when you were at Iwo Jima and when you were in the Philippines and at Okinawa. On a daily basis, did you feel stressed out?
No. Just at the times like when you at Iwo Jima, you could see a hot shell coming into the beam of the searchlight. Luckily, we didn't get hit. But yeah, that made you kind of duck a little.
Did you do anything special for good luck?
No.
You know how some people carry a rabbit's foot or that officer's lucky coin?
Oh no. In fact, I found another coin, and it was from a friend of mine that he got blown away.
It was at Okinawa too?
Yeah.
Did you save both of those coins?
Yeah, and I know I gave them to somebody so that it would go to the families. You know, the owner.
In both cases?
Yeah.
What did you do when you weren't in combat or you weren't patrolling? What did you do for entertainment?
Well, take a shower.
Did you play cards or see movies on board or anything like that?
Sometimes they would play cards once in a while, but I never really got involved with that. But you had things to do. You had, like we had the electrical workshop, and it was also the mechanics. They had a lathe and the workbenches and your tools, and you know. So there was things you could do, which was more than usually what we had to do. You could shoot the breeze with a couple of guys. Once in a while they'd play cards
Did you see any USO shows?
No.
Did you see any entertainers? Did they ever come aboard your ship?
No.
While you were overseas, did you get any leave or R&R?
Only on these islands where I told you where we saw the natives and so forth. That's the only time we...
And what would you do on your days where you would get leave?
Well, it wasn't really leave. You'd go ashore in the boat, you'd do what, and then you'd get back and go back to the ship.
Oh, so you never got like a week where you could go
Oh,
on
no.
it?
Oh, no. Not even a night.
Oh. So you were actually living on board this ship the entire time?
Yes, that's
Did
right.
you ever get seasick?
No.
What did you think of your fellow sailors?
Well, most of them were good. There was one that was a thief, and we had to, you'd hang your clothes on by your bunk, you know, and he'd try to get the money out. If you had some money out of the wallet, you'd leave in your pants or when you took a shower, you know. So we had to explain to him what was going to be the result. He got caught at it.
So did his thieving stop?
Yeah.
Do you feel that the training you received before you went overseas was adequate?
Yeah.
Did you make any good friends that you stayed in touch with in the Navy?
No, I made good friends, but I didn't stay in touch with them. They were all over the place, you know.
Well, you must. Do you remember any guys that you became close with? Because you were living with these same guys for your entire time in the service, so it was like all of you were one huge family. Do you recall any guys that you became particularly close
Well,
with?
there was one guy, his name was Lucius Stingley.
Lucius Stingley?
Yeah, and he was from Mississippi. But I never saw him after.
So after you left the service, you never saw any of your friends?
No. No.
And I know you did keep a personal diary. Were you allowed, even though they censored your letters, were you allowed to keep a diary, or did you do that on your own?
Well, till you take a look, you'll see it isn't very neat.
Oh.
So you're just pieces of paper with dates and.
Which talks about your experience. That's a great thing.
Yeah.
That you did keep that.
Yeah.
Were you a writer? Did you keep a diary when you were a civilian? What
No.
made you decide you wanted to write these things down?
I really don't know why, but in fact, as I say, I can't really read these things now, but I made, a calendar and then dated which direction we were going and where and all that.
Well, that's valuable for history. I'm glad you did that.
Oh yeah.
What did you think of the officers in the Navy?
Well, some were good and some were not.
Do you recall any specific officers?
Yeah. Yeah, there was one, I don't know his name, but he was concerned with the below decks gang, the machinists. And he was not pleasant. He was not a reasonable person. So I had a little trouble with him. But most of the ones were, they didn't associate with the plain people.
When you got back to the United States, then you went back through the Panama Canal and got discharged at Boston. That was in June of 1946. What did you do immediately after your discharge?
Well, before I get to that, I got to tell you a story.
Okay.
Now we're in the building. It might be called the Fargo building. I don't know. But anyway, we're getting discharged, so we're getting examined and so forth. So they told us to line up, drop your pants, bend over. Now this officer, or somebody, that was crippled. He's in a wheeled chair thing, a powered wheelchair. He's checking all the behinds and goes down the line.
You got quite the job, huh?
Yeah, and then we got discharged, and I got to the train station. I'm buying the ticket, and somebody took my papers and left theirs.
So accidentally, your papers got switched with he was another Navy man?
Yeah, another guy. And so the next day I went back to Boston and the same building and gave him the papers, but he never returned mine. He never brought mine back. That's why I had to get the...
You got copies of...
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you never found out who got yours?
That's right.
What did you do after your discharge? Did you go right back to work? Or did you go home?
Well, I went home, and I think fairly quickly I got a job as an electrician, working as an electrician in Newburyport.
Before the war, had you wanted to be an electrician?
No, my father was a carpenter, and I'd worked occasionally with him. So I was geared toward that direction.
But then you were trained as an electrician in the service, so did you stay working as an electrician for your entire career?
I worked as an electrician. I got a license, But then I also worked in factories, and you didn't need a license in the factories to be an electrician. And I worked on some electronics. And
Did you go back to school at all on the GI Bill?
seems to me I went to Boston, and it's hard to remember why I went, but it was some education at night. It wasn't a stay there a day or anything. It was just a.
So it was some kind of night school?
Yeah.
You worked during the day, then went to school at night?
Maybe once a week,
Yeah.
something like that. I forget now why.
Did you
Didn't.
join? Go ahead, what?
It didn't last long.
Did you join any veterans organizations after you were discharged?
I think I did. Nothing that was,
Nothing that you were really active with?
No.
Are you a member of any military or veterans organizations now?
No.
Have you attended any reunions?
No. This is the ship I was on. Has got a newsletter, monthly newsletter.
They still have a newsletter?
Yeah.
Is that ship still in service?
No, but the guys it stayed in service, and it went to Europe and the Mediterranean, so forth after the war. And so a lot of the guys in here I don't know. They were
Right.
different guys, but I still get a monthly newsletter.
Do they ever talk about any of the guys that served during the time you were in?
Oh yeah.
Oh, so that's kind of nice.
And they talk about going to reunions and places where there's monuments and stuff like that. I haven't been with them.
You haven't been to any of the reunions?
No.
Do you know where that ship ended up, where it is right now?
It ended up in probably Philadelphia or someplace where they dismantle and destroy them.
Oh, so it's no longer in existence.
That's correct, yeah.
John, did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
I suppose it did. To me this was it, and that was it, and there you are. I didn't do any thinking about it. It was just, what was going on.
How would you say that your military experience affected your life?
Well, it was just I learned electrical, so that I got an electrical license after I got back, and I worked with an electrician, business in town, and then I got to work in factories, because I left town and we went to another area and another area and another area. We moved around a bit.
How did you end up in Connecticut, where you live now?
I had arranged to get a job in Florida. I had a job waiting for me. I had a trailer. We sold a house and got a house trailer. And we left, and we stopped in Shelton, in the trailer park.
Shelton, Connecticut?
Yeah. And there was a lot of jobs at that time. A lot of, talking with the people. And then we went on to some place in New York, I believe it was. And another trailer park. Well, we were on our way south. I decided to hell with it. We turned around and came back to Shelton. And then we lived in the trailer, and then we rented a house in Seymour and Shelton. And then we moved to Seymour, an apartment, and we went to West Haven, and we bought a house in West Haven, and then we bought this one here.
So where did you get a job in Connecticut when you turned around and came back?
Oh, International Instruments was most of the time.
And you were doing electrical work?
Yeah, it was a electrical lab, yeah. Made instruments.
So how long have you lived in Connecticut? When did you come?
Probably about
1953?
Yeah.
So you've been here quite a while.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
John, is there anything else, any other stories or memories or incidents that you can recall that I haven't asked you about?
Not really. No, not really.
You'll think of it after I leave. Well, John, I'd like to thank you for your service and thank you for this interview.